We are live, right? So why don't we, in the abundance of caution, since this is a formal meeting, let's take roll, Mr. Clerk, and then we'll go for public comment, and then we'll go on to the retreat item. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany. Albany. Berkeley. Berkeley.
I think Kate said she'll be here a little later.
Dublin.
Yes.
City of Fremont. City of Hayward.
Present.
City of Livermore.
Here.
City of Newark.
Here.
City of Piedmont. City of Pleasanton.
Here.
City of San Leandro.
Present.
City of Tracy. Community Advisory Committee. Union City.
Here.
City of Emeryville.
Here.
And City of Oakland.
Present.
Right. And so we have Jessica Devar is on our speaker list, and I am going to unmute her now.
Okay, and if anybody who's in the attendee container would like to raise their hand or let it be known, we'll take those hand raises now and go in order. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I just wanted to highlight that how the local development business plan came to be. Back in 2016, the advocacy of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance and also the work of the Alameda Labor Council created a unity proposal, a position to call for a community choice program that invests in local clean energy development to create jobs and other community benefits within the East Bay, Alameda County, and now Tracy. And at that time, the vision was to really do a lot of investments in local wind, solar, battery storage, and really utilize the power of community choice aggregation to be able to scale up and create union sustaining wage jobs. And at that time, our ask was to create the Community Advisory Committee and have the chair sit on the board with you all. But also the commitment to community benefit goals, including specifically the economic benefits to the region, jobs, clean energy jobs specifically, community ownership of renewable resources, and developing a local development business plan so that we can achieve and have a plan moving forward for the next 10 years of how we would unroll this development of union and family supporting wage jobs and other community benefits, committing to taking steps to minimize the impacts of workers and the displacement as we continue forward in this transition to a clean energy economy. So I just wanted to highlight some of the history that we played a role in really visioning a community choice program that does more than just provide electricity, but actually invests in the local community for the betterment of our East Bay, and begin to build that clean energy wealth and transition that we need desperately to create resilience in our communities. So I wanted to just highlight, thank you for that work thus far, and just reground us in where this all started and came from. So thank you. Clean power to the people.
Thank you, Jessica, for sharing that. Many board members were not aware of that history, so it's really great that you shared that. Thank you.
I should say, we have two speakers with their hands raised. Should I put them on the speaker list?
Yes, please.
We have Igor Trigub and Ernie Pacheco. Trigub, I'm going to unmute you now.
Thank you very much, Chair Kalb and board members. It's good to be spending my time here with you all today, and thank you for your good work. I am speaking today on behalf of the Sierra Club. I wanted to associate myself with comments that were just made by Jessica Tovar, and the Sierra Club is a proud member of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Today, you have an opportunity to provide additional equity investments and a budget that that invests in a power shutoff prevention program and resiliency hubs energy investments that we need to provide, especially for communities that have been historically harmed by pollution, power shutoffs, and in general, not being at the table. All of us, I imagine, were in shock to see the situation that recently befell ratepayers in Texas. And it really breaks my heart to see customers, to no fault of their own, incurring bills sometimes of upwards of $10,000. Thankfully, we're not in Texas. Thankfully, we do have a CCA. The mission of the CCA is to advocate for our Alameda County and beyond, like Tracy community. And there is a great opportunity here to start by leading by example and providing investment in clean energy that will benefit those communities that have been most impacted by those environmental harms. Thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to hearing the rest of the meeting.
I am unmuting Ernie Pacheco.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Sorry. Ernie Pacheco, Hayward resident and member of the Community Advisory Committee. And I raised my hand actually just to agree with Jessica Tovar's description of the creation of EBCE and the goals that we worked to install in it. I was a part of the labor component of that joint labor community environmental organizing, and also would like to associate myself with the comments that Igor made as well. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And I think I see one more. I think a couple more hands raised. So, Mr. Clerk, let's call on those two as well.
Yes, I am unmuting Beth Weinberger.
Thank you. This is Beth Weinberger. I represent Kahila Community Synagogue, an Alameda County congregation of some 500 households. Most of our members live in Oakland or Berkeley, but throughout the EBC area. We have been involved with East Bay Clean Power Alliance from the beginning, and I just wanted to support everything that Jessica said. We have worked really hard to make sure that, as she said, the development that is part of the plan benefits local communities, local small businesses, and creates good jobs locally from local build out of clean energy resources. So I want to support what she said about that and let you know that the community that I represent very much favors a local development business plan that favors local development, that creates good jobs in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am unmuting finally Cynthia Laundry.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Landry. I'm also on the Community Advisory Board, and I'm a social worker in Alameda County, and I directly work with our safety net population in providing services. SEIU Local 1021 also supports the vision that Jessica just stated, and also is in alignment with the Sierra Club. And I believe that metrics of equity and inclusion of our low income community in all aspects of participation in EBC programs should be lifted up. We, you know, our low income folks should be able to participate in all the programs to the extent that it is financially feasible. Also, this coming year, we may have the rollout of the call center, hopefully in Alameda County, and hopefully those jobs can be union scale and or family sustaining jobs. Lastly, we support uh, um, community in enhancement. Um, Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all the public commenters and the tremendous work that they are doing and have been doing, both on the Community Advisory Committee and in the community and with EBCE. So at this point, I'm going to just turn it over to JP, and I know Nick's here as well, and ask that we get started with the retreat information.
All right, sounds good.
JP, this is Nick. I just want to make one sort of, I think, kind of comment to frame things up, I think, before you jump in. And that really is, you know, I think Jessica really highlighted, you know, kind of the origin of the local development plan and, you know, all the work that went into that. And I think I really just wanted to highlight, you know, at the highest level, and JP will get into a lot of the details, you know, some of the great progress we've already made to that goal. Just in this last really 2.5 years of operations, EBC has been able to sign contracts or support contracts in excess of 200 megawatts of local Alameda County cited renewable energy projects. Those are thousands of good union family sustaining jobs that are going to be created building those the three very large projects that we've contracted for. And I think if you put that in context of what other CCAs or even the utilities have done, it puts EBC, you know, head and shoulders in front of really everyone else in terms of the amount of local clean energy investment we have been able to catalyze. And so I'm so thankful for the community drive to prioritize this, and I'm just really proud of the work our team has done to help get these projects contracted, and in the case of our wind project, built. So JP, why don't you take it from there? Thanks.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Nick. Just as an order, Adrian, do you want me to drive the slide deck or do you want to? I'm happy.
I'll go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much for pulling that up. We can go to the second slide. So to reiterate, some of what Nick said, and to jump right in, we are really working to implement what was largely an effort of community stakeholder feedback around what EBCE could do and should do as a CCA representing Alameda County and now, beyond Alameda County, which we're excited about and we'll talk through. We are really a couple years in to executing on the agenda of the local development business plan. And so a few things I'll touch on here at a high level. Over those 2 years, we've been allocated just over $13 million in EBCE operating revenue to invest in local programs. And we've really been focused kind of across the programmatic areas that were originally outlined in the local development business plan. And as we'll go through today, are executing on a lot of those. I will mention that we also put together a staff report, and the staff report has a lot more detail on these programs, where they are, the timing, and happy for the board to digest that at your convenience. We won't be talking about every single activity or program today, kind of highlighting the ones that we think are the most interesting, and certainly happy to answer questions on any of them. I would also highlight that we did pull some money out of the local development business plan to invest in CBOs and the community in response to COVID-19. So we pulled about $1.4 million essentially out of this budget to put into the local communities. And then we, outside of this local development business plan, as Nick mentioned, there are other activities that the organization is really focused on that deliver local benefits. Certainly our utility scale wind project, our Oakland Clean Energy Initiative battery project, the solar project that we are intending to procure resource adequacy from Aramis, which is certainly a topic of discussion. So there's a lot that we're doing on the utility scale side that is also delivering jobs, and certainly those all have PLAs for organized labor that we are focused on. And then lastly, out of this budget, I would highlight that we are now a team of 5 full-time staff that are engaged with local development. We've recently added Samantha Weaver from our regulatory team. You'll hear from everybody today. This will be a tag team joint effort as we talk about the activities that we've been focused on, as we kind of walk you through where we are. And just to make sure everyone's clear, this is not a budgeting conversation. This is an update on the activities and the budget that's been pre-approved through the standard budgeting process. And we'll certainly be coming back to the board to have a budgeting conversation at the end of the fiscal year as we're developing next year's budget. But this is really an update of where we are on the past budget, so that you're all aware of what we're doing, and we can work with you better to deploy and build new programs that meet our community's needs. Next slide, please.
Mr. Chair, do you want to take questions on the slide presentation as he progresses, or should we hold questions till the end?
Good question. JP and staff, what's your preference? I don't want to wait till the very end to ask all the questions.
Yeah, I think why don't we take them on the slides, and then if it turns into a longer discussion, then we might request to push it to the end or a later time, depending on our time availability.
Okay, so if you have a question, please do your raised hand, and I will keep attentiveness and check to see who's raising their hand.
Can we go back one slide, Adrian?
And Michael, Councilmember Hannan, you have your hand raised? Yeah.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chairman. JP, just real quickly on the $1.4 million that we spent locally to assist the nonprofits, that, my understanding, is not a typical expenditure of the local development spending plan. Was that decision, and is that decision made at the board level, or is it made at the staff level?
I think Nick will have some feedback. I think it was a bit of a joint conversation, but Nick, you want to take that one?
I'm sorry. I
The-
had a, yeah.
the
Sorry,
COVID
could you
relief
repeat the
fund-
question? Yeah.
The
Yeah.
COVID relief
The
fund,
co-
Nick, is that a board and staff decision on the 1.4 million?
Yes, it was a board decision. I mean, look, it was a staff recommendation to the board, but the board approved the allocation.
And so the nonprofits that were receiving the 1.4 million, the nonprofits that were identified, that came from the staff, or that came in consultation with the board themselves?
That was actually EBCE issued a solicitation, and we received applications from, we probably had applications worth in excess of $3 million, and we had a very robust internal review and scoring process, and then those, the grants were scored, recommendations to make grants were made, and then the grants were made. I actually don't believe the individual grants, to the degree that they were under $50,000, actually came to the board. We did have the second round of grants, which I believe Councilmember Hannon, you were on our board for, that we did bring forward because they were $50,000 grants, and those were brought to the board for review and approval.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, JP. I think it was a good use of funds, and I appreciate your willingness to help the nonprofits during a tough year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks for that. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we are, very excited about, and we think that the investing in the community can really, bring about, is accelerating and scaling the monies that we have through basically leveraging other public and private capital. So EBCE has a limited amount of money that we can spend on local programs. But we certainly are looking to deploy that capital in a way that is efficient and brings other money to the table, whether that's public money through, say, our CEC grant or our Air Quality Management District grant that brings state dollars to the table, or other utility dollars to the table, like our heat pump hot water heater program, which is leveraging some IOU funded programs through BayREN. Or private capital. So many of the programs that we are running will result in an individual homeowner or business owner or our public agencies putting in some cost share in order to build out some of the projects associated with the local development business plan. So the $20 million that we are investing should deliver many times that in total capital expenditure, which results in jobs in our community. And so that's going to happen from both our kind of behind the meter, smaller programs on the local development side, as well as our utility scale projects, which will deliver construction and operation and maintenance jobs. And that's something that we're going to continue to look at as we go forward. Next slide, please. I also wanted to put a call out to our new communities. We're really excited to have our 3 new communities joining us pretty soon now. We were, when we first wrote this up, it was a few months away, and now it's just around the corner next month. And so wanted to kind of just let you all know where we are. We've actually kind of put together a bit of an internal matrix around each individual program, and when we can start rolling those out to new communities. Most of them will be dependent on actually bringing customers over to EBCE service, so that we know that the residential and commercial customers are taking service from EBCE to the extent our programs are open to individuals. But then there's some programs that we are looking to move a little earlier, certainly our municipal programs, where we have full confidence that our municipal accounts are going to come over to EBCE. And I think like an example of that is our induction cooktop lending program. I know Noah on our team has been in conversation with all of our cities now about that. And so then there are, as I mentioned, other programs that as we enroll new communities, we'll be working with your city staff and certainly our marketing and account services team to figure out the best way to message and start to enroll customers. There's one thing to mention is there's a lot going on now. We have the EBCE enrollment. We also have the TOU transition. We also have EBCE programs. And so, most people, unlike maybe people on my team and in our organization, don't have electricity service at the top of their mind every single day. So we do want to be conscious of kind of information overload and rolling these things out when people are really ready to hear about them. I will say for our Resilient Home program, the message about the program has definitely been landing. We're getting a lot of inquiries for that program from Pleasanton, Newark, and Tracy. So people are certainly hearing about us, which I think is a good thing. And then, we're certainly responding to those folks and saying, we're really excited about their enthusiasm. We're not quite ready yet, but when we are, we'll get back to them. So we also want to keep that communication line open when people are reaching out to us. So we're almost there, and we're excited to bring our new communities into our program portfolio. Next slide. So the next couple slides are really about metrics and measuring of benefits. So one of the deliverables from our local development business plan was a model. And that model is really can serve two purposes. One is to analyze the benefits of particular program offerings. And the second is to measure the benefits to the community of our program portfolio. And so we are actually now in the process of re-engaged with one of the consultants who helped to develop this plan. And the original plan, the original tool as it was delivered doesn't quite match with our existing set of portfolio of projects. And so we're working to modify the tool that was delivered with the local development business plan so that we can input our programs to the greatest extent possible as they currently stand, and start to model some of our expected benefits to the community in the form of jobs, wages, savings, GHG and pollution emission reductions of the portfolio programs that we are currently running. So that's an engagement that's underway now. We're making some good progress there, and we want to come back to the board and say, hey, here's our portfolio of programs. These portfolio programs are expected to deliver these types of benefits. Now, there's some benefits that are kind of best suited to a modeling approach like this, such as, say, greenhouse gas reductions or job creation and wage creation numbers, because it's really hard to tie that to a particular solar system or a battery system or a program. It's better set to a modeled type of output. So that's one way that we're doing this. And then if we move to the next slide, there are also things that we will be measuring at an individual kind of account level. And as we roll out Salesforce as our customer relationship management tool, we'll actually be able to pinpoint some of our activities really at the account level. And that can be things like, the amount of solar and storage that's been deployed, or an electric vehicle charger that's at a municipal facility, or energy efficiency measures. And we can not only look at those at an account level, but we can also start to think about some of our other targets around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our disadvantaged communities, because the model that I referred to on the previous slide, that doesn't tell us where these benefits are accruing. They really just say to the community. Whereas the Salesforce reporting that we are building right now can really start to identify who these projects are going to, who these benefits are accruing to, so that we can look at how we are doing towards our equity measures. Because then we can say, oh, this was installed in a disadvantaged community, or in a low income community, or on a care or medical baseline home. If the customer was an owner or renter, it's a bit of a challenge. It's something we'd like to understand better because we don't have that data at a macro level. So the Salesforce deployment that Taj is currently running, we fully expect to be kind of operating and looking, at some portion of our metrics that we'll be measuring really at an independent, and at account level, so we can start to extract, who these benefits and who these programs are most benefiting. So we're really excited about this kind of two-prong course, and please recognize there'll be some gray area of overlap between the two. We're trying to model everything, and then we're trying to measure some things. And just because you can measure it doesn't mean you should. And the local development business plan set up a framework of metrics and benefits that we can start with. And so that's what we're trying to execute on today, and we'll come back to you independently on metrics specifically as we continue to flesh this out and build our capabilities here. Next slide, please. So one other key area of the local development business plan was workforce development and the creation of jobs. And so did want to call out that our utility scale projects do have PLAs, project labor agreements, for union and prevailing wage. And then, by and large, a lot of the residential or smaller projects, it's harder to get those kind of large capital L labor agreements in place, but we've been doing our best. For example, with our Resilient Home program, we made sure that there were some specific hiring and workforce development requirements for the residential solar program that we are working on with Sunrun. And the programs that we are working on are really trying to tie these things together. One additional way that we can do this is in partnering with local workforce development training organizations. So we did get $100,000 from one of our utility scale developers on the Summit Wind project. And so we've actually selected 3 workforce development organizations: Grid Alternatives, Cypress Mandela, and the Tri-Valley Center, which is a part of Las Positas College, to deliver those grants to. And one of the ways that we can create some ties to our programs with workforce development grants is to work with our vendors and say, okay, we're going to put some money into these workforce development organizations. We want to make sure that there is pull, that the jobs that we are creating from our programs are creating opportunities for the people being trained with our grant dollars, so that there's actually a place for those folks to go, a hiring process, a way that they can get trained specifically in the trades where we are going to be creating jobs, and then push on, use our vendor agreements, our commercial agreements with vendors to create some pull and to hold them to task for interviewing and hiring some proportion of the people that are coming out of these training programs. And so that's been a great kind of synergy between the program side and the grant side, and honestly our utility scale developments, where we're trying to get some community support. And so it's quite exciting to see how that's rolling out. And we're really now at the point where we have established meetings with Grid Alternatives and Cypress Mandela and Sunrun to say, what should these trainings exactly look like? What is Sunrun's hiring process, and how are they going to make sure that they are interviewing and creating some hiring processes for the people coming through these workforce development activities. I'm gonna stop there because there's a few hands.
Yes, I see Councilmember Lopez and then Councilmember Hannan.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the threshold for the utility scale developments. What is the lower end threshold for that so it qualifies to be a PLA?
I'm not sure about that. I think all of our utility scale developments have had a PLA. I think our smallest one there is the Summit Wind project, which is about 60 megawatts. I believe our OCEI, which is the battery, Nick, I'm not exactly sure on that one, but I think that one does.
That project does operate under a PLA as well. We don't have a specific threshold 10 megawatts, 20 megawatts, 30 megawatts. What rather we have as our policy is a clearly stated preference for projects with PLAs. And what that has meant is, practically speaking, in every one of our projects, save for our residential projects, so projects where we're seeing, measures being installed on individual residential homes. Every other project we've pursued really has effectively operated under a PLA, whereas our residential projects have not.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike?
Yes, thank you. JP, my question, and thank you for reaching out to the local enforcement development organizations. I think that's certainly a great opportunity. Did Mission Valley Regional Occupational Program, was that one of the programs that was considered out of the Fremont area?
Hey, Zach, I think you were on that evaluation. Can you answer that?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing anything from that.
We did not. I do not believe we received any application. When we were looking at the workforce development, we did really target workforce development providers that are focused on clean energy. So in Alameda County, there are really 3 entities that focus on clean energy. Of the 3, and Zach, jump in here to further clarify, I believe only 2 of the 3 were sort of actively providing training at the time. And so that was how we ended up with Greenlining and Cypress Mandela, right?
Great alternative.
Grid
Grid
alternative.
alternatives.
Great alternative. That's what I meant to say. Yes. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yep.
And that makes sense, but I would simply ask that maybe you contact Mission Valley Regional Occupational Program to see if they have a program or are in the process of setting up a program that might give us an opportunity to reach out to another organization. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you very much, and thanks for this presentation. In terms of the work that you're doing on installing solar in cities, and I'm sorry if I missed this, sorry, charging stations in cities, does that come out of the local development fund? And you're taking the LCFS credit, is that right? Is that how we're doing that?
Yeah, it does. And we're going to go into that in more detail. You haven't missed that section yet.
Okay, great. And then I just had a question about whether any of the COVID relief that we offered came out of the local development funding that was out of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So about 1.4 million did. There was some other funding that came out of other departments. But yeah, the one that was out of the local development business fund, about 1.37 million came out.
And can CCAs get federal relief through the federal COVID relief bill? Are we going to get any money out of that?
We do not believe that we're eligible, Councilmember Harrison. So we did, for instance, look into whether we might be eligible for a PPP loan, but we were not. And so far, the only benefits we see out of the American Recovery Plan are there are funds that are set aside for consumer utility bill, but all of those funds are actually going to be delivered directly to consumers. So our hope would be we would benefit in the sense that it would help people pay their bills in arrears, but we don't get it directly.
We're not going to get money back that we can put back into local development.
I do not expect that we will. No.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I would caveat that with that our team is certainly looking at federal stimulus for all the types of programs that we're running, and to the extent that we can leverage federal stimulus for electrification, vehicles, connected communities, solar and storage, resilience. There's a lot that's there, workforce development. So we're certainly keeping our eyes out. Whether or not EVCE can get the dollars directly, I think there's other ways that we can leverage those funds.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think those are all the questions for now.
Yes, thanks. Okay, great. Thanks for those. Let's go to the next slide, please. So now I'm going to start talking, and we will start talking through some of our specific programs. And the first that I'll talk through is our Connected Communities program. I'm actually going to go over this fairly quickly today because at our next board meeting, we have an agenda item on the SMUD Energy Help program and some of the things that we've been doing, for our communities and customers who are potentially who are in arrearage and facing disconnection. And so we're going to go into this in more detail. I did want to call out Samantha Weaver, who's recently joined us. Hi, Sam. Sam has been on our regulatory team, so you've seen her, and she's coming over to help on our programs team manage our Connected Communities program. So you're going to hear from Sam and me next week. And so just wanted to briefly cover our Connected Communities work. So this is work that we are focused on for our customers who are facing challenges paying their bills. And we have, even prior to COVID, some zip codes with very high disconnection rates, between 10 and 15% of accounts in some of our zip codes were under threat of losing their electricity service. And so we really built a portfolio of activities under this Connected Communities rubric. And one of the things that we have kicked off is some focus groups with customers who have been unable to pay their bills or have been disconnected, to extract some, some learnings and hear what they are challenged with in paying their bills. And frankly, that conversation becomes much larger than just paying their utility bills. And so we're really trying to listen to our customers about where their challenges are and understand some of the solutions that we can try to meet those challenges, and then test actual interventions so that we can see if there's ways that we can help reduce those arrearages and the potential for disconnection. There is a disconnection moratorium, and so customers aren't currently getting disconnected, but that's something that is not going to last forever, and we want to make sure that the arrearage that has been built up doesn't overwhelm customers. So we have our DAC GT program, which is a way to deliver a 20% discount to care customers living in DACs in disadvantaged communities. And there's also the arrearage management plan. So I hope some of this stuff is familiar. We've been talking about this for a bit, and so we'll again go into more detail next week. And then the last element of our Connected Communities program is really to partner with the UC Berkeley team, who's helping us to kind of evaluate how to test the interventions that we want to try and see, are those interventions actually having impact on customers' arrearage and potential ability to pay their bills. And one of the great things that this team brings to us is actually access to data that we don't have, which is the household's credit and the household's ability to pay all of their bills on a monthly basis. Because we know that paying utility bills is just one of the bills that our customers are juggling. And so, just looking at the myopic focus of the EBCE bill is one piece of it, but from a household perspective, it's really how are they paying their, the monthly slew of bills that they're continually juggling. So that's a brief update on Connected Communities. And again, we'll go into significantly more detail next week. And Councilmember Harrison, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
No, that was a failure to take it down.
Okay, great, thanks. Next slide, please. So one thing that we are excited about is the DAC GT, which is the Disadvantaged Green Tariff and Community Solar Green Tariff CSGT programs. These are things that we are planning to get going on this year. As I mentioned, Sam has come on board to help us with this. And this is going to help us basically give to around, that's a typo, 2,200 customers living in which are care customers living in our DACs, a 20% discount on top of the 30% discount that they get from care. And so to do that, we'll be building some solar projects in Alameda County. And the solar from those projects will be delivered to these customers. And then once they take delivery of that energy, they'll be getting a discount. And this is going to happen after the enrollment of our new communities. So we'll plan to open that up to our customers in these communities. And we also are looking at ways that we can overlay it with the arrearage management plan, which is a way to provide debt forgiveness to customers who are able to pay their bills. So this is something that's pretty exciting. We were thinking that our DAC GT offering would need to wait until we actually built a solar system. Now we're looking at ways that we could buy some interim solar from another CCA so that we can deliver this to our customers a little earlier. And so hopefully that can happen this year, and giving relief to our customers as early as possible is a big priority. It wouldn't preclude us. We would still plan to build a system in our territory to serve our customers, but closes the gap between now and when we can offer that discount. So that is a brief touch on connected communities. Again, we'll talk about it more later. And now I'm going to pass it over to Becky Menton, who's going to talk about our energy efficiency and building electrification work.
Thank you, JP. Good afternoon, directors. My name is Becky Menton, Program Manager for Building Electrification and Energy Efficiency. So I wanted to start us off by talking about some of the work I'm currently scoping out around whether or not EBCE can and should pursue energy efficiency funding. To start it off, I thought it might be nice to sort of frame how CCAs can access energy efficiency funds and how those funds are currently collected and administered, so that there's some context. The first thing I'll say is that all California ratepayers who are under an investor-owned utility and or a CCA currently pay for energy efficiency programs via the non-bypassable charge portion of their bill. That means that every EBCE customer is paying for programs that are administered by PG&E and is still eligible to receive energy efficiency benefits from the incumbent utility. However, the legislature also established a pathway for community choice aggregators to access those funds and administer their own energy efficiency programs in their service areas. There are two avenues available for a CCA to pursue that funding. One is called the application pathway. The other is called the election pathway, and I will briefly describe them here. The application pathway is an avenue where the CCA can apply for the broader set of ratepayer funds, meaning that there is no definition or constraint around the budget that the CCA is eligible to receive. The CCA can then in turn serve programs to any customer. They don't have to be CCA customers. However, the trade-off associated with that is that you then accept the full weight of CPUC jurisdiction over those programs and funding, and that is not inconsequential. There's a ton of regulatory activity that the CCA would need to participate in, a lot of additional rules and regulations around how those funds are contributed, and it basically is a very heavy level of effort. The alternate pathway was specifically developed so that CCAs could have an easier access to receive funding through the CPUC. This pathway is where this probably too convoluted graph I pulled together on this slide comes into picture. The funding that a CCA is eligible to receive under that election category, first you start with the total pool of funds that are collected just from CCA customers. Then you limit that by the funds that those customers are paying for regional or statewide programs, because as I mentioned, those customers still can get them. Then the leftover, as in the funds that are really targeted for local initiatives across the portfolio, becomes the amount that CCAs are eligible to apply for under an elect to administer portfolio. And unfortunately, that number changes year by year based on the utility filings and based on the collections charged by CCA customers. So one of the first steps that we have to go through when we're exploring whether or not those EE funds are something that's worth us to apply for and what that picture looks like for us is a funding determination. All of that to say, that's where we are right now in the process of exploring energy efficiency, is how much funding is available for us under that elect to administer pathway, and can we stand up a viable, cost-effective portfolio with that funding that's currently available? So we can move to.
So Becky, thank you. I want to ask a question about that to you and to anybody else on staff. So do we have a ballpark sense as to the percentage or the dollar amount or percentage differential between the extra large, all-encompassing pot of money, if we were to go that route with the CPUC oversight, substantial oversight versus this more targeted or narrow pathway that we would elect to take on? What's the magnitude of dollars differential there? Do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, we do. Thank you for that question. So the apply to administer approach, there is no constraint. So what defines the amount of budget you would apply for in that case really becomes what you think you can cost effectively deploy as a portfolio. So I'll come back to that one in a second because we do have one data point we can point to, which is MCE's portfolio, because they are administering energy efficiency programs under the application pathway. For the election pathway, what we're looking at right now is 3% of the funds that are collected from our customers would be the budget that we're eligible to receive, which is about 2.5 million a year. So for the smaller pathway, 2.5 million. For the larger pathway, historically, MCE was able to apply for and receive funding for $10 million a year worth of programs. What we're seeing, however, is that the cost effectiveness threshold is narrowing further and further since when they originally applied to where we're standing now. This is because as codes and standards ratchet up, what you can actually claim as a saving in your portfolio is diminished by what is then required by law. And that has created a case which would not be unique to us, but is shared across all program administrators. And so that, I think, is turning out to be the bigger constraint actually than the total amount of funding available.
Got it. So the additionality benefit basically is okay. And one other question: if EBC were to choose to do the election route, the more limited route, does that preclude us from changing our mind a few years later and go to the larger route?
It does not, no. And
okay.
What MCE did, they launched an elect to administer in 2012. The same year they filed an application.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. The one thing I guess I'll say on this slide is that we are not a decoupled utility. This means that our revenue is driven by our sale of electricity, whereas the investor-owned utilities are decoupled. So on the one hand, it does seem that energy efficiency activities would not benefit us because they reduce our rate revenue. It also means that it's extra valuable to pursue funding that's already been collected for those programs, because otherwise our customers would potentially be double paying for energy efficiency activities. On the other hand, if we are in that driving seat for those energy efficiency dollars, we might have the possibility to really direct the funding of those dollars to things that benefit our resource portfolio specifically. And I'll talk more about that in a few slides. So that's sort of a highlight to our logic behind pursuing them. So we can move on. I'll talk through these next two slides very quickly. So this is where we are at in the work plan. As I mentioned, we've brought on a technical consultant to review the cost effectiveness analysis. In early January, we conducted the funding determination where we looked at the existing budgets and we tried to figure out how much we'd be eligible to receive. Now, for the last month or so, we've been in the process of actually looking like, what would it be to administer a cost-effective portfolio, knowing what we would like to do in terms of the type of measures we would like to deploy. Can we effectively achieve a portfolio within the existing cost effectiveness framework? So that's currently where we're at. We were hoping to have an advice letter for submission around April, but we're going through some iterations on the cost effectiveness. So I will have to say that's a bit TBD until we can finalize that work. And we can move on. I don't want to talk about this in detail, it's very busy, but what I did want to show is what we're doing through this development process. So on the top left, we started with the market characterization work, which Noah was really tremendously helpful. Basically leveraging all the phenomenal data that we have internally to get a sense of who are the energy consumers in our service area, what are the types of buildings that we have, what is the age of that building stock, what income levels do we see? How many languages are spoken in our service area? Who is a renter? All of that information is incredibly valuable at helping us understand the landscape, if you will. And we are also hoping to get a redacted version of that we can post and make available to our community. So it's not just us that benefits from that amazing information. Following that, we moved into program ideation. Program ideation, basically, where are the opportunities? How do we want to develop these concepts? Portfolio development is where we are now, which is the process of, with these concepts, can we be cost effective? Is this going to work at all? And then the last stage is iteration, and where we actually bring in lessons learned from the pilots we're running, where we refine our program assumptions, and where we tighten our program. The reason I thought this was useful to represent is because ideally, this is how it would look for us in implementation as well. Like, we plan for this to be a continual adaptive management process where we're learning from the market and refining and improving our programs as we go. We can move on. So EBCE has also, as a part of getting ready for CPUC filing, we have independently funded 3 energy efficiency pilots that I'm really excited to talk to you about. Those 3 pilots are all shared in that they're really looking at being data-driven targeted programs using the phenomenal data that we have at EBCE. Can we get better both about designing programs and delivering them to the customers who would benefit? These programs are also really looking at combining peak management along with traditional energy efficiency. In today's renewable energy dominated landscape, where we're seeing more and more renewables come on grid, the pure reduction of energy efficiency, like the pure reduction of use, is not as valuable to our portfolio as it used to be. Now the time of day when you influence that reduction in energy has become much, much more important, both in terms of maximizing the greenhouse gas gains from our renewable energy, as well as from helping customers in the system save more money. So all of our pilots are designed with an approach of, can we deliver energy efficiency with peak management strategies at the same time? And the final piece that's really important about what we're trying is that these are meter-based programs. Traditional energy efficiency, you give a rebate for an estimated amount of savings. We think this appliance will save this much money when you install it, so that's what we're going to claim. Where we're moving and where the market is really starting to move is actually measuring the meter impacts at the level of the project, so you can truly see what kind of change did you cause over the baseline, and that becomes the basis for how we pay incentives. The 3 pilots that we are administering, I want to briefly, let's see, did my next slide do that? Yes, I did. Let's go to the next slide. Sorry, brief hiccup. And since it's the same graph, to underscore the point I was saying about how we use data to be better at delivering these programs, this chart in front of you shows an example of what targeting can do in terms of selecting a program. So the red dotted line in this program, what you're seeing here is an average load shape of EBC residential customer. The red dotted line is the total population. The blue line, however, is a targeted group of customers where we said, okay, we want to select for the groups of customers who have the biggest proportion of their use in the evening peak period, that 4 to 9 p.m. period. So then the gray line is the customers who were filtered out. And what this really demonstrates is that through leveraging that data, we can get the programs in front of the people who will benefit the most from participating in the program. It also means that our programs are much more cost effective in implementation. So we have 3 pilots that we're currently running. The first is we've finished the first phase and we're getting ready for a second phase, but it was focused on care customer enrollment. So in that program, we targeted customers who were in care. On the care rate, we offered them services through Rising Sun. Rising Sun Youth Energy Services is a great Alameda-based organization that employs local youth, trains them on energy efficiency principles, and has them deploy energy efficiency to customers throughout the service area. And then we additionally worked with Rising Sun and a company called OhmConnect to see if we could get those customers who've gone through the greenhouse call program and then enroll them in an OhmConnect platform, which helps them manage their peak energy consumption and in fact pays them money when they're able to reduce their use. A nice feature that we added through this OhmConnect program is an auto ohm participation. So the original OhmConnect program model required someone to turn off their lights, kind of like the Step Up, Power Down program. Now we were able to actually give these customers devices that can automatically control their load so that they don't even have to lift a finger, and yet they can benefit the state and get paid for their participation. We've had about 200 customers that we were able to enroll actually in about a very short time frame. So we're pretty excited about those enrollment figures. The other program is residential energy efficiency and peak management. This sits on top of the BayRen Home Plus program. Many of you are likely familiar with BayRen. It's an organization that administers energy efficiency programs throughout our service area. And they had an existing program targeting market rate residential customers, getting them to really invest in full home retrofits. So what we're exploring with that program is, can we stack an additional incentive on top of what BayRen is already doing to encourage both a better installation, because then the contractor isn't just worried about, oh, I install this, I get this rebate. Now there's actually a rebate that is based on how well the project does. So we're paying them for quality installation, and we're doubling those incentives during peak periods. So we're really trying to send a price signal that we'd also love to see peak period reductions as a result of these projects. For example, if you go out to a residential home and you improve the AC, that's great for energy efficiency. If we can convince the contractor to also install a programmable thermostat, to work with the customer on site to understand the scheduling of that thermostat and to help them set hours, to try, for example, pre-cool strategies where they cool the house extra from 12 to 3, and then they don't have to turn on their AC from 4 to 9 when they come home because it's already comfortable. That's the type of measure that we're hoping to incentivize through that program. That one is currently enrolling. The measurement period for this will be between April and September, so we can really see the impact that we get on that summer peak. And then the final program is a commercial flexible demand marketplace. This is what I call a soup to nuts energy efficiency program, meaning we're not stacking on top of an existing program. We're providing incentive for the full suite of improvements that we see. The model that we're trying here is where we basically have a standard offer out in the marketplace. We'll pay incentives. Again, we're giving price signals for higher incentives during peak period. And then we allow vendors to sign up for that marketplace. And then they're in the position of going out and enrolling projects and selling it however they can. And then similarly, we're going to be measuring the meter base and paying incentives on that. And that one is also currently open for enrollment. So we can move to the next slide. Another strategy that we have had under building electrification is supporting our local government jurisdictions in enacting REACH codes. Local governments, as you all may know, have authority over establishing building ordinances that are more stringent than Title 24 if they can be shown to be cost effective. So we've been working with TRC engineers and developing model code that local government agencies can consider adopting. We're really trying to get electric preferred construction to be in these local codes, as well as measures that facilitate EVSE installation, electric vehicles, charging station installation, solar ready, that kind of thing. REACH codes are great because any building that we build is likely to be there for another 30 to 50 years. And that in many cases can saddle us with existing natural gas appliances and make it much more difficult to rake that service back down the road. So this is a really important way that we can partner with our member agencies to make a really big impact and have no regrets planning. So far, we've supported 8 jurisdictions as they pursue REACH codes. 5 of those cities have passed them. Congratulations to those 5 cities. 2 more are in the process. Dublin, I have here as sort of a holdout because I know it's part of the climate action plan, but I don't think there's plans to bring it to the council agenda anytime soon. But yeah, that's great. So we can move on from there. So this moves us into the building electrification slides fully. And I wanted to pause briefly as I'm talking about the Switches On campaign to really capture where we are with building electrification. I mean, right now we are trying everything we can to get customers to give up their natural gas appliances in favor of high efficiency electric alternatives. We know it has to happen for greenhouse gas mitigation measures. We know for a rates basis, as more and more customers do opt to go all electric, those customers left on natural gas rates may see higher and higher rates occur on the natural gas side. So it's a really high priority for us to get as many of those customers as we can now onto the building electrification side. But for high efficiency heat pump water heaters, the market is at like less than 1% saturation of those installed. That means that we have barriers at every level of the market. Not that many contractors know about it. Not that many stores stock it. It can take a while getting through building permitting. And most consumers have no idea what it is. So we're trying to attack this problem from basically every side. And this slide is an example of some of the work that we've done in partnership with the Building Decarbonization Coalition around the Switches On campaign. The Switches On campaign is really that first step of consumer awareness where someone's never heard of a heat pump. They have no idea why an electric appliance would be useful at all. And it's intended to pique their curiosity. Like, what is a heat pump? Why would I even think about an electric appliance? The whole campaign is supposed to be a little cheeky, a little cute, and is supposed to encourage customers to actually click on the ad and go to an accompanying website where they can get a lot more information about why electric appliances are awesome these days. They can find contractors, they can even send contractors messages to try and get bids for projects, and they can connect with rebates, including all of the rebates that we offer for building electrification are already integrated on that website. So it's one, we're leveraging this campaign as well. We have invested 30,000 in creative investment and about 7,000 in actual ad placement. This is leveraged by Southern California Edison, PG&E, SMUD, a cohort of CCAs throughout the service area, a bunch of municipal utilities, including Healdsburg and City of Palo Alto, to really make sure that for our somewhat small investment, we're getting that message across a very broad geographic region. So far, we've received over 300,000 impressions and 2,000 clicks just from the collateral that we've posted. So it's been a really great opportunity, and that's really just November to January. So it's been a great opportunity to start to get people in our service area thinking about high efficiency electric. We can move on. I will now invite Noah Cordoba, Climate Corps Fellow, if you'd like to speak to our induction cooking strategy.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, everyone. So one of the pieces we're looking at in terms of addressing barriers to whole building electrification is in the place of induction cooking as compared to gas cooking, which is what people are used to and what is conventionally been used. We see induction as the barrier to induction being more psychological compared to technological, meaning that the technology is there, and what we need to do now is just on what it is and get them to make the switch. And we did particularly look at this in the space of commercial restaurant industry as a key sector, because there is a lot of apprehension around making the transition from gas to electric induction. We have a two-pronged approach, as Becky mentioned, with the consumer awareness piece, raising general awareness about what induction is, and also providing funding to offset costs to make the switch to induction more accessible for more customers. And so we can jump to the next one. Some pieces we're doing to work through this is one, I've a few listed here. First one being a restructuring of a previous electrification grant program that we have. We've restructured this to be a kitchen electrification rebate targeted at non-residential customers in order to provide incentives to make gas to electric conversions in commercial or non-residential spaces more accessible, because we recognize the market isn't quite where we need it to be in order for these to be financially viable. We're particularly interested in making these incentives available to places with high chef throughput or high exposure to the chef community in order to kind of work on that hearts and minds pieces of making people more aware of induction as a technology. Another piece we're working in terms of like educating people on what induction is and getting them experience with induction cooking is providing member agencies induction cooking kits, which are then hopefully being made available to the community to practice and get hands-on experience with induction and learn about what the technology is. So far, we have 9 cities within our service territory participating. COVID makes it a little bit of a more difficult program to administer, but we're hoping that in the coming months, this will be more available. We're also working to develop relationships with local induction and appliance vendors to access discounted pricing and opportunities to increase exposure to electric kitchens for non-residential customers. In addition to that, we've also developed and produced a number of induction educational videos that I'll probably turn to Becky to give an outline of, and I think we might be doing a little bit of a demo as well to show you.
Yeah, so I want to do a time check. We have a series of videos we're working on to really promote induction both to residential and chef communities. The first 2 are ready and they are really wonderful. But I'm going to propose actually that I send the link in chat and we don't watch them now unless we have time at the end. So I want to make sure there's time for Jesse to present to you. But how do folks feel about that? JP, it's good timing.
I'd like to see at least one of them. Could we? How long are they?
They're 3 minutes. We can pull up the.
Oh yeah, let's why don't you pick one? Let's see it. I think it'd be exciting.
All right, Adrian, you ready? We've practiced this a few times because it's never easy to transition from PowerPoint to video.
We got this.
Don't forget to enable computer sound sharing.
Can't hear it, Adrian.
We're not hearing the sound come through, Adrian. Can you?
In the kitchen, she's been the biggest influence in what I do. When I was young, I spent a lot of time with my mom in the kitchen. She's been the biggest influence in what I do. I would call her regularly for recipes, and it's frustrating because you want everything to be exact. Everything's just by sight and sound, and a pinch of that or a thumbful of that. I would even go there to cook with my mom, and still, she would like sneak a little bit of salt, a little sugar, and to the dish. And she's like, "Well, you cook with your, your heart and your soul. You can't really measure that." And so right there and then, I'm like, okay, I just kind of have to adapt and just trust my own palate. Today we're at Forage Kitchen. We're going to cook using an induction burner with a wok. It's a quick stir-fry dish with beef. You serve it with a soft-boiled egg, and you dip it in a lime, salt, and pepper sauce. We have red onions, some tri-tip, marinated with oyster sauce, some soy, and then we're going to saute that with garlic. Turn this on. When cooking with a wok, it's usually over an open flame to create that nice sear, the high heat. But with the induction burner, like a button setting up to the temperature that I want within seconds. The wok just heat up. That, I was really impressed with. And we see that ready to go, and then we just carefully add the meat to sear it. Steak cooks at really high heat, so knowing that I can control the exact temperature and seeing the result, I look at the wok now, I'm like, I wouldn't mind having this at home. The garlic is caramelized. The meat has a nice color. I'll add the onion. When we're sauteing veggies, you want to stir constantly. Once you see that the vegetable is kind of wilting, that's when you know it's done. That was what, 2-3 minutes, and then you have complete lunch or dinner. So now I'll just turn this off, and instantly you can hear it stop cooking. So you have full control. I also use the induction burner to make soft-boiled eggs. With the correct stainless steel pot, the water came to a full boil pretty fast, less than a minute. Oh look, it's going. Cool. Let's crack one open. Oh, perfect. Gorgeous soft-boiled eggs. The only thing I knew about an induction burner was like a flat surface to keep food warm. I didn't know that it was that powerful. Wok cooking is just such an age-old tradition, and so if the new technology gets the same result, especially using the induction burner, knowing that it helps the environment, that's really important to me. And I think, I'd be more willing to change and to adapt.
Adrian. Thanks everyone for choppiness. The last thing I'll say, I shared in the chat a link to the first released. We did that one in conjunction with Rima Seal at Fruitvale Station, or she has her first spot was by Fruitvale. And we've been producing these in conjunction with Sunset Magazine. They're releasing them as PSAs, which has given us a really phenomenal platform. The first video had 6,000 views like within the first hour or so. So take a look at that one too when you get a chance. And that is it for the Building Decarb side.
I see Councilmember Harrison has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. I'm so excited given that Berkeley passed the first natural gas ban. And I'm wondering, do your incentives include dealing with the panel level? Because that's the main problem we're having. It's not the problem of the stove. It's the electric supply, the panel, the transformer. So do we have incentives for that, for commercial kitchens?
We do. I'm basically speaking for Noah, who's done a phenomenal job designing this rebate, but there's a $2,500 portion of the rebate available for dealing with wiring or upgrade issues. The panel may be one, there may not be the appropriate phase outlet where you want the induction unit. So some of those considerations are part of the program.
Great. Can you send us all more information about this? I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, the program will go live in about a month. So we'll be sure to blast out the information when it does.
Great, thank you.
And Noah and Becky, will the information we receive be in an easy to use form that we as elected officials can put in our respective newsletters?
Duly noted. Yes, we will also make sure to have both our website and some good, easily repeatable talking points.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Becky. I do encourage everyone to check out the other videos. They're great. And, we're working with your folks to provide some digestible snippets as well for social media and other channels. So with that, we're going to pass it over to Jesse and Zach, talk about resilience and transportation. And we're going to run through a bunch of stuff here. So maybe now that we're on the last section, we can save questions to the end to make sure that we get through the materials, if I can ask that of the chair. Great, thank you.
All right, can you hear me okay? All right, terrific. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessie Denver, and I manage our Community Resilience and Transportation Electrification Program and Strategy. And just as a reminder, we launched the Resilient Home Program as our first major local development program last August. And this program really is aimed at helping homeowners deploy solar and storage to be able to meet their needs in time of grid outage, as well as to participate in a two-way conversation that hasn't been able to happen before with EBCE, where they can share power from their battery with us, and that helps us reduce load at times when there's high demand on the grid and we need to be able to meet our resource adequacy needs. So we designed this program and selected a vendor, Sunrun, through a competitive solicitation to help us actually deliver the systems and the load reduction component of the program. And I'm excited to report that, against all odds last fall for consumers with wildfires and other kinds of distractions, we have over 1,000 people who have signed up for the program. And we actually have nearly 200 systems that are in contract. This even just since I last updated this slide, it's changed to 192 contracted systems and 34 permission to operate. So our plans for this year with the program are to ramp up outreach. So we're going to be doing outreach in our new communities, as well as additional rounds of outreach in our existing communities. Now that we've moved kind of out of the holiday season, it's time to ramp up the outreach. And we're also going to start engaging our multifamily property owners. And this is really the developers. So affordable multifamily developers, market rate housing developers, and getting them in touch with Sunrun to receive no cost quotes for their properties, both for common
space loads at their developments and for tenant loads. Next slide, please. Also on the resilient side of things, for the last year and a half, we've been working really hard to assess more than 300 critical municipal facilities throughout our service territory. And this was done partially in support with a grant from the Air District that was awarded to EBCE. We did loop in Peninsula Clean Energy into this effort, which is why you also see some dots here on the map across the bay. And what we basically have been doing with our local government partners is developing lists of critical municipal facilities, of which each of our city partners identified those specific facilities that are designated to serve the community in some way in time of emergency or major grid outage. So community centers, libraries, your EOCs, some admin buildings. And then look at what size solar array and storage system is needed to meet critical loads at those facilities. This effort is also really meant to set up a new type of procurement pathway by where EBCE would become the central procurement entity to actually deploy these systems and to help local government partners by being the counterparty to an industry power purchase agreement. So that's where we're at right now. We've done extensive economic analysis as well as the system sizing analysis at each of these facilities. And we're working with our local government partners, your staff, to prioritize facilities that are within each of their portfolios to make sure that we're developing the most cost-effective portfolio for the first tranche of procurement. So if a facility, for example, doesn't make it into the first round of procurement, there will be additional rounds. Just some of the issues that we're facing with some of these sites is they might need structural upgrades on the roof, or they might need electrical capacity upgrades, or a roof material replacement. And these are going to take some time in planning. So we're really trying to find what are the early opportunity sites and then move forward with a procurement pathway in 2021. Next slide, please. We also received approval this fiscal year for a budget that would enable us to do two things. The first was to scope a program that would help deploy solar and storage systems on homes of electricity-dependent pediatric patients and partner with UCSF Benny Hoff Children's Hospital in Oakland on that effort. The pandemic started and we had to pivot because Benny Hoff and their staff just was too overwhelmed and was not able to engage in the program. So we kind of redirected the funding that was allocated for that, which was about $250,000, to developing a portable battery backup program for electricity dependent medical baseline customers in our service area. And we've spent the last year doing an extensive data analysis in collaboration with Alameda County Public Health to understand what types and how many durable medical devices are actually in our service area. And then start to figure out how we match technology solutions, meaning battery energy storage devices, to meet the needs of those residents that might have one or more durable medical devices in their homes. And so we'll be coming back to the executive committee later this month, actually with a deep dive into what we're proposing for the utilization of that $250,000 and how we'll actually be procuring those portable batteries and disseminating them out before fire season this year. Next slide, please. So switching gears, JP, should I pause for resilience and then jump into this, or do we just want to take it all? Okay, keep going. All right, so switching gears to transportation electrification. Last time we checked in with you about the Cal EVIP program, which is the California Vehicle Infrastructure Program. This is a program of the California Energy Commission. Every year, the California Energy Commission selects regions or counties where they're going to bring investment for publicly accessible level 2 and DC fast charging infrastructure. We, beginning in 2019, started working with the CEC to have them bring a program to Alameda County, and we have been selected as one of the 4 2021 projects statewide. So it's very exciting. The CEC investment in Alameda County was determined to be $14.5 million. And the CEC wanted a co-funder. And so we, EBCE, are the sole co-funder of the Alameda County project. And when we came to you last time for the budget approval, we matched that incentive investment with another $14.5 million that would be allocated over 4 years. So our Cal EVIP project with the CEC will launch Q4 of this year. So sometime after September, they still haven't nailed down a date exactly. And in that year 1, we will be bringing $3 million, which is in our current budget, in incentives to match that $14.5 million investment by the CEC. And then what we've chosen to do is to take the remaining budget, that is EBCE incentives, to be allocated over the next 4 years. So the remaining $14.5 million sans the $3 million. And we're going to launch our own standalone project or program in 2022. So EBCE will have a standalone incentive program that is separate from the Cal EVIP project. And there's a few reasons why we're choosing to do this. Cal EVIP, while we will base much of our incentive program in 2022 on the kind of rules of engagement of Cal EVIP, we will have more control over how incentives are actually distributed through a standalone EBCE program. It is likely day 1, when Cal EVIP opens this year, that it will oversubscribe in the first 10 minutes. That is what has been happening with all Cal EVIP projects statewide. So it's really important to us to make sure that the way that we allocate future incentives, the way that we provide future incentives for public charging infrastructure is done in a really equitable way and doesn't just sell out in the first 10 minutes. 25% of all the Cal EVIP budget, so that $17.5 million that will be available later this year, has to be spent in DAC or low income communities. And EBCE, we've done our team has conducted this really extensive data analysis this year to understand how this program could deliver the biggest benefit possible to the community. And so we wanted to shape this program a little bit different from other programs statewide that the CEC has launched. And so we really looked at our multifamily properties in Alameda County that had 5 or more units. And what we found was that over 90% of the multifamily building stock is actually in excess of 50 years old or older, which means it's going to take quite a bit of effort to upgrade electrical capacity in multifamily buildings to accommodate level 2 or level 1 charging in these buildings. And because Alameda County's population is 47% renters, what we also see from our DMV registration data is that there's been very little adoption to date of electric vehicles by renters. And so if we're going to achieve the state's goals of deploying 1.5 million zero emission vehicles by 2025 and 5 million zero emission vehicles by 2030, we really have to start to help this population. And so EBCE wanted to make sure that some of our funds our DC fast charging funds through Cal EVIP, that the state is bringing to Alameda County, they go where they're most needed, not where industry wants to put them. And so this is near multifamily hotspots where there are a lot of renters. We also asked the CEC to approve a specific programmatic requirement in our project that didn't apply before in any other projects, and that is there's an adder or an extra incentive for multifamily properties that are in disadvantaged or low-income communities. But when we look at our affordable multifamily housing community in EBC's service territory, there's a number of developments that are actually outside of the DAC low-income boundaries, but they serve the same population of residents as the affordable multifamily housing properties that are inside DAC and low-income boundaries. So we wanted that added incentive to extend out to all affordable housing property developers, since they manage portfolios of buildings and not just want to invest in charging infrastructure at multifamily properties kind of in one area, but not in another. And this in turn would really enable equitable investment in charging infrastructure across all affordable multifamily housing properties. So both of these specific asks to the California Energy Commission were approved. And it's because of this extensive data analysis that we've done. So we've actually created a tool, a mapping tool, and I'm going to turn it over to Zach to show you some of this data and the mapping, because we think that it's really crucial for everyone to be able to see like how big the need is and where we have identified the gaps, and how these solutions that we're putting in place are really going to drive investment where they're needed and have the biggest benefit for the community overall. So while Zach is doing that and getting set up to show you that, I also wanted to note that we're using some of our budget to provide technical assistance to affordable multifamily property owners. And we will have a consultant on board in April who will be able to start coming out to affordable multifamily housing properties throughout our service territory, including the city of Tracy, and be able to conduct EV charging assessments and give those affordable multifamily property owners reports that they would then be able to take to a vendor to get a bid to actually get ready to submit applications for incentives in the fall. Zach, are you ready?
Yeah, all right. Hi, everyone. Zach Thompson. If someone could give me a verbal yes or thumbs up that you see a map. Yeah, okay, great.
Yep.
So obviously our service area here, I'll touch on a couple points that Jesse mentioned about our Cal EVIP program, starting with the affordable housing piece. So one thing we can do with this map is see all of the census tracts that are Cal and Virus Green designated census tracts. And then we can also see which ones are AB 1550 low income communities. So that's all of the census tracts shaded in blue. And obviously you can ignore the ones outside of our service area here, but just wanted to show those for the sake of this conversation. And so then we also know where all of our affordable housing developments are. And I'll just make a quick caveat actually about the map. You'll notice some gaps in data for our newer communities. That's not because there's nothing there, obviously, it's just because that data is coming in as those new communities come into EBCE service. But anyway, so every yellow triangle here.
I have to probably connect with you at 4 possibly, or 4:15 to talk about the other stuff.
Oops, someone is cross-talking here.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so every triangle is an affordable housing development. And so you can see that there are a significant number of them that fall outside of those blue shaded census tracts. And so that was the point that Jesse was making, and that we showed this map and made this point to the California Energy Commission. And they approved of that change to our program to make all of these affordable housing developments eligible for that same additional incentive that applies to any projects located within a DAC or a low income community. So that was one piece. And then the other was the the multifamily or multi-unit dwelling population and reserving a percentage of the DC fast charger incentives to serve those populations. So what we've done here is mapped out all of our multifamily buildings. So these are residential buildings with 5 units or more. And the size of the red triangle is reflective of the actual number of units in that building. And so you can see just how densely populated our service area is with these types of residences. And then when we overlay EV registration, which we have from the DMV that we're able to get from them as a public agency, when we zoom in, you can see that there's really hardly any overlap between the green squares, which are registered EVs, and the red triangles, which are multi-unit dwellings. So basically for an EV to be registered at one of these residences, the square would have to perfectly overlap with a red triangle. So we know that this population of renters, which Jesse said is about half of our residences, they're really facing some significant barriers to EV adoption. And so what we wanted to do with the Cal EVIP program is try to better serve this population. And so the other thing we can do is overlay our publicly accessible charging infrastructure. And so you can start to see where there are some pretty significant gaps. So the blue or the purplish dots are publicly accessible level 2 chargers. And again, the size of the dot reflects the actual number of charging ports at each site. And then the same thing for the DC fast chargers, which are the yellow bubbles. And so then we can put this layer on, which is a grid where each square is a square mile. And so then you can start to identify, where there are some gaps of, several square miles at a time, where there's a ton of MUDs and hardly any publicly accessible charging infrastructure and probably 0 DC fast chargers anywhere nearby. And so then, particularly if we're talking about level 2s, we can put on this layer here. And this shows basically every one of these bluish polygons represents the closest publicly accessible DC fast charger. So we can start to zoom in on some of these and you can see, how many square miles we're talking about here, how many MUDs are in there, and they're all sort of relying on this one DC fast charger area here. And you can just sort of scroll through and start to see how densely populated some of these areas are and how little charging infrastructure they have. So that's part of our Cal EVIP program, is reserving funds for DC fast chargers that go into these MUD hotspots. And so we've actually done that here. And so again, these are square miles, and the darker red the square is, the more multi-unit dwellings, actual units, are in those squares. And so basically this is what we'll be reserving a portion of the DC fast charger incentive funds for, is for fast charging projects that actually fall into these squares. And so I think I'll pause there or actually, I'll go back in actually. So from here, we can start to zoom in, identify these sort of hotspot areas that we're talking about. And then we have all the NAICS codes linked to our customer account IDs. So then we can start to zoom in on an area that we want to target for DC fast charging deployment, and then start to identify what types of facilities are there that could host that charging infrastructure. So we know where all of our parking lots and garages are. We know where things like gas stations are, faith-based organizations, department stores, grocery stores, things like that. And then also start to map out the different types of amenities that people could then walk to while their car is charging for 30 or 45 minutes. So we have things like gyms, banks, restaurants, parks, playgrounds where people may want to take their kid for 30 minutes while their car charges, doctors' offices, salons and barbershops, schools, post offices, libraries, you name it, we can map it all out. And so then we start to look at this layer and say, okay, these are our hotspots that we want to target for DC fast charging. And then we can zoom in and say, this is a great area here with all of this parking and all of these amenities that people could walk to while their car charges. So now I'll pause. I know that's a lot.
Great, thanks, Zach. For the sake of time, JP, do you want us to take questions or do you want us to move through the slides?
I imagine that there's a couple questions, so I think we should take a couple of questions because, yeah.
You bet. And I know some questions came in through the chat. This data that we've analyzed is connected to our customer database. So we're not able to publicly share this data. And this tool then is also internal to EBCE, but with regards to connecting with city staff to share the results of the tool and what it means for each individual city, we have started doing that, especially around EBCE investments in DC fast chargers. And I'll get to that in a few minutes in the presentation, but we'd be more than happy to schedule time with all staff from different cities to run through this in greater detail. We've also presented this to the CEC, to the governor's office, the Air District, Alameda County Transportation Commission. To date, no one is aware of anyone who's done this kind of extensive data analysis because EBC is in a very unique position in having public data that's only accessible to public agencies like DMV registration data, but also being a public power provider and having that connection to the utility customer data.
Thank you. We do have a few questions. Let's see, Councilmember Lopez and then Councilmember Kick.
Well, thank you for answering that question in part, Jesse, and thank you, Zach, for the presentation. I think there has been some interest, generated in the chat and so forth. I think there's some interest in seeing how this, some of this data, specific to, each jurisdiction. I certainly am interested. You say that there's some inability to share information. I'm disappointed in that. I'll just say, our particular, I'm not sure if there's some sort of legal reason, if it's not identifying to a specific customer or if there's a way of protecting privacy. I know in the city of San Leandro, we do have an open source data policy in our city. That is a trend that many jurisdictions have gone to open source data for exactly these reasons, so that use of public facilities and public monies can be researched and looked at by the public, so in the interest of transparency, really. So I would be really interested in having further policy conversation amongst the board on open source data, so that the jurisdictions can have better access to this in a way that's specific, again, to jurisdictions. I know you're sharing it with staff. I do appreciate that. But there's a lot of useful information, and we can't let the perfect get in the way of the good here, in my mind. And if we're looking to kind of get in the forward direction, a lot of that can be accomplished by the sharing of data, and data does drive public policy decisions and so forth. So withholding data and having it be sort of like this and huge aggregate sort of platform is really very disabling. So I just wanted to share those comments with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Kick.
I understand that this is very specifically focused on those fast chargers, but something that I think is really valuable here, especially for cities like mine who are doing their Gen Plan update and talking about our climate action plans, just being able to see this a very high level overview of data, even if it's like screenshots to our staff as we're talking about, like, hey, look, this is how many playgrounds are in these various areas. I think it really points out some of the equity issues in our communities. So, even just that kind of base level data, I think could be, or high level data could be very useful to us, even if the actual ability to manipulate it is not available at this current time. So if that's something you could look into, I would appreciate that.
Can I address one thing? Councilwoman?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify there are elements of this that are related to specific customer accounts, like where vehicles are registered and the addresses of some of our customers. There's other information here which is publicly available in the property tax records. So all the property tax records that's available to everyone includes the NAICS codes, which includes basically all these retail attributes that Zach scrolled through. So I think we can talk through about what are the things that are publicly available and how is the tool and can the tool be used with that data. And then there are some certain layers of data which are specific around, that is personal information, which we would not want to share. So I think we can probably come to a balance here on the tool and the information that's in the tool that is publicly available that I think probably meets a lot of these needs. And then to Jesse's point, we're also, if the accessing the next level of data that has account specific information is important, then I think that's something that we're happy to review with staff, again, but not just to provide the tool and access to the tool whole cloth.
Oh yeah, absolutely understanding. This is just great work, and as much of it as we can utilize as cities to improve our climate action plan specifically would be incredibly valuable.
I want to just make. Oh, hey, can you guys? Someone's Slack is up here, Zach. So can you just make sure your Slack is not showing up on the screen? One consideration here is, to the degree that it's utility user data, for instance, we are subject to very stringent rules around our ability to share data. So those are rules that the California Public Utilities Commission has set. Similarly, we do have access to DMV data, but we're subject to very stringent requirements around sharing that. And that's actually data that our cities are not privy to, but we are as an energy provider. So I think that's something that maybe we can internalize and sort of, kind of come back with a sort of a description of here's the data that by current law, we're not able to share. And here's the stuff that we are. So because to the degree that we can share it, we're keen to do it.
And please keep in mind that we developed this specifically to help shape initially our Cal EVIP project so that we could get approval from the California Energy Commission to spend incentive dollars a very specific way in our service territory. And so this initial map is just that. It's intended for the launch of Cal EVIP and helping vendors who will be applying for incentives on behalf of site hosts and or site hosts themselves understand where DC fast chargers are going to be eligible for being incentivized. When we develop our standalone program, we're working with our data team to think through how we develop a more interactive map. And so, I think over kind of the medium term, meaning in the next 12 months, it's something that we can take all of this feedback and think through how we make something that is more accessible to especially our authority member stakeholders, in addition, on top of us working one-on-one with your individual staff members. So, all right, we have a few more slides and I want to be mindful of time that we only have 5 minutes.
Let me, let's get to a couple more quick questions. I have a question as well. Councilmember Hannan and then Councilmember Harrison, quickly, please.
Yes, thank you. I'll avoid a couple of the questions I had. I am concerned about the electrification of facilities where people are reliant on electricity for their medical benefit. And I know you mentioned that you're working on that issue moving forward. Is there an opportunity for us to specifically isolate those homes where we have citizens that are reliant on medical devices and electricity to support them, where if we should have a rolling blackout, we can ask PG to simply not turn off the power to that specific house? Is there a capacity to do that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Kate, why don't you ask your question first, then they can handle both of them.
Yeah, mine is of a more general nature about the EVIP program. You know that we have decoupled parking in Berkeley now. People have to pay specifically for parking, and we've also eliminated required parking minimums and set maximums. So we're going to be seeing new buildings without any parking. And I'm interested in what programs, you don't have to answer this now, but I'd be interested in the future, what programs you have for siting these charging stations at centralized places, because we're moving towards a pattern of not having parking at buildings. And I'm not parking my EV 20 blocks away overnight. And so we're going to need quick chargers in centralized places. And it's a slightly different land use pattern, which because we have competition between our environmental goals, more housing, less parking, but we also want people to have EVs instead of gas cars. So it's just something to keep in mind. If we're only looking at the building level, we're kind of limiting our ability to say we're not going to put parking into these buildings, but people may still have cars, EVs.
Yeah, so the question of a set of gas stations, electric stations. Okay, can you try to quickly answer those two questions, and I have one quick question after that?
Yeah, you bet. So with regards to the medical baseline piece, no, that's not possible. When someone is a medical baseline customer, they get advance notice from PG&E that there's going to be an outage. But what we're really trying to do is provide them with a solution that can help them if there is an outage, because PG&E is not able to isolate their individual household from the lines on the grid that are going to be, de-energized. I will note that, and again, we're going to give a special presentation on this at XCOM later this month, but we just did a survey. We sent out a survey to all of our medical baseline customers asking these very questions about what their electricity dependent medical device needs might be. And within a week, we received almost 500 responses, with 400 people asking for us to follow up with them and provide more information about programs that we might develop on portable batteries. So there is definitely interest and need. Councilmember Harris, I definitely hear you. And in Berkeley, we know exactly how space constrained you are. For everyone on the line, EBC is really interested in investing in major fast charging hubs where we can site, 12, 15 or more DC fast chargers in one centralized location. So that is a priority for any investments that we make.
Thank you for that. I have a quick question, and if it's a long answer, we could talk later offline. I saw the presentation included something that you reached out to Children's Hospital Oakland and they declined participation to help their pediatric. Can you explain what that was?
Yeah, sorry for not being more clear. So they didn't actually decline. They were very much engaged in the beginning when we shaped this project and when we started to implement the details of it. What they were going to do was help us connect with their pediatric patient households that might benefit from having solar and storage installed on those homes. And they were going to do that through their social worker employees who have connections to those families. But then the pandemic hit, and those social workers were so overwhelmed with dealing with patient issues due to the pandemic that there wasn't room for them to be able to coordinate on this specific project.
Got it. I understand. Just going forward, anytime you're reaching out to Children's Hospital, you're welcome to call me as the council member of that hospital area. I have a good relationship with them and happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, they're super great. They are great. Yeah. JP, do you want to switch over to the last few slides? So I'm going to run through this very quickly. We had come to you letting you know that we are working to streamline electric vehicle infrastructure permitting throughout our service territory. And this was really important in bringing a Cal EVIP project to Alameda County. This was actually a requirement of the CEC that places where they were making state investment in charging infrastructure incentives, they wanted everyone in compliance. And so we're excited to report that EBCE has provided technical assistance to all jurisdictions over the last 12 months. And within about a month, everyone should be in compliance. So as you can see on this map, There's a lot of green in Alameda County and a lot of red and yellow everywhere else. So we're really proud of this work and extremely grateful for all of our local government partners who have taken advantage of the technical assistance and helped move this forward within their own building departments. Next slide, please. All right, so the other area where we're really focused is on zero emission medium and heavy duty goods movement. So that's the electrification of medium and heavy duty vehicles that are local delivery, regional delivery, and long haul. This includes drayage trucks, it includes Amazon delivery vehicles, it includes box trucks. So just to kind of give you a sense of what class 3 through 6 and class 7 and 8 vehicles look like. And EBCE actually has a goal to make our service area a first mover market for urban delivery. So that class 3 through 6, starting by 2030. And we're actually working with the global kind of leading think tank on zero emission medium and heavy duty goods movement, CalSTART, to achieve this, this goal. So similar to how we have light duty vehicle registration data from the DMV, and that's integrated into our database, we also have the data for medium and heavy duty vehicles. And we've actually scoped or begun to scope a medium and heavy duty technical assistance pilot that will be rolling out. And so the first step in all of that is looking at the data and understanding where are the medium and heavy duty vehicles registered, what types of vocations are they engaged in? Is it food and beverage delivery? Is it something else? Is the location that they're domiciled at, is it a logistics facility, or do they do business at a logistics facility? We're really trying to understand what vehicles are doing what and where, and that will help us figure out how we can, in a very systematic and comprehensive way, bring fleets and fleet users to the table to understand their needs around fleet electrification assessments, and charging infrastructure assessments at the facilities where they're domiciled and where they might need opportunity charging because they don't have the ability to install charging infrastructure where the vehicles are domiciled. So I want to ask JP, I know we're at time. We probably don't have time to do a presentation of the data. We might have to save that for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
We'll have to do that. I think we are at time and appreciate everybody's attention and questions. And there's, as I said, more information in the staff report, and we are happy to meet and talk with your staff around how you think this might be of interest on any of the things that we are doing. And we certainly look forward to coordinating with your cities around rolling out and continuing to expand and scale our programs.
Great. Well, thank you, JP, and all the staff who presented today. I'm going to forget people, Jesse and Zach and Becky, and who did I leave out by mistake?
Noah.
Noah.
Samantha.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
there.
I'm everybody. Thank you, everybody. I really just want to say for everybody to hear that the work that our staff does is amazing, and I think we should all be so proud that they have chosen to work here at EBCE, and they're doing great work, and I just really appreciate everything they're doing, and there's so much more to do. Adrian, do we know when do we have a date set for the next retreat session?
We are still setting the date for the next retreat. It'll be the first week of each month going forward for the next 4 months.
Okay. So thank you those who were able to attend today, and I don't see any other hands raised, so we're going to adjourn the retreat and hope everybody has a nice, safe, healthy, enjoyable weekend. And thank you again.
Thank you very much.